sure that we
We
are
are
live.
live,
Okay.
aren't we? This
Yeah,
meeting
we
is
are
being
live.
recorded.
Yeah,
Got it.
just
I have
let's
to consent to that, do I? Yeah, got it right. Okay.
yeah, either that or you can send it to the CCP and that you don't consent. That you don't consent. All right. I think we got audio, right, Jay? Is that good? Are we getting audio? Yep. Okay, very good. And down under, good brother. Well, Jay, you didn't get a chance to say hi. Sorry, Jay. I almost skipped you. How you doing, Jay?
I'm I'm good. The sound should be coming through. I'm seeing all good
Yep.
levels here.
I think we're getting good sound
Yeah,
now.
I can hear very well here too.
Okay, very good. Just under recording, I think it was a little bit. People were saying no sound. And down under, Davey, how's Australia? How's our brothers there, brothers and sisters from Australia? How are they doing there?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks, Marco. Everyone's still pretty encouraged by the meetings. Want to thank you. Thank the people too who have been sending in reports too from the about the meeting. So really appreciate the feedback. And we've got a bit of a meeting here tomorrow. So yeah, we're all doing well. And the sound is going. We're getting reports the sound's back up. Yeah.
Praise the Lord. Well, on the second day of Hanukkah, we're getting together here. So it's Friday, December 8th. And Jacob Prash, just wanted to go over to you. You got a couple of things before we talk about Hanukkah. You have a couple of prayer requests, burdens on your heart. I want everybody to hear it, and so people can join us in not only in your request but in prayer and in their lives regarding this. So just want to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, again, as you know, I've been recently in India. And while we were in India, we opened the new church that we built. The church existed before, but it needed a meeting place. You can't meet in homes in India too easily because there's too many people getting saved and the homes are too small, not to mention not air conditioned, etc. So we built a wonderful building with the help of the Lord called Moriel Horeb Church on the border of Pakistan and India in the Punjab. We're like halfway between Amritsar, the holy city of the Sikhs, and Lahore, Pakistan, but we're on the border, almost right on the border. And it's an area where there's a lot of persecution. Obviously, the Muslims don't like us, the radical Hindus don't like us, but there's a particular problem with radical Sikhs. There was opposition when we opened the church when I was there with Mark Jackson and his wife and Pastor Samuel from our orphanage in Andhra Pradesh, and also from Pastor Vijay, who pastors the church in Punjab. But it was not violent. Now it's still not violent, but instead there's police harassment, wanting to see financial records and wanting to see all kinds of things because or in response to complaints made by the radical Sikh community. So please pray for Pastor Vijay and pray for Moriel's work in India. The orphanage is doing very well by God's grace. We're going to expand it, build 3 more stories up to take more children. And also the church, the opening of the church was indeed blessed of the Lord. You can watch it on the Moriel website on the India missions page. It's posted there and you'll see the church, you'll see pastor, you'll see the opening. So pray for India. Something else. I used to preach the gospel regularly at Speaker's Corner when I lived in London, when I was in seminary and after that. And I preached to Jews, to Catholics, and to Muslims. I was replaced with the Muslims by somebody who's a lot more qualified than I am. I speak of Jay Smith, but also a young Turkish woman who was a Muslim who got saved named Hatun Tash. She's had a terrible time. She was stabbed in the face. She's been unjustly arrested and harassed by the police due to political pressure from the Muslims, a lot of things, but she's gone missing. Some people say she's well. Other people say they don't know. We've not gotten anything official, either from her ministry or from any ministry we know who's associated with her, such as Jay Smith or Dr. David Wood. So until we get something official from an official source, she's still missing. And we're praying for Hatun Tash. Please pray for Hatun Tash. She's a wonderful sister and a wonderful evangelist. You know, I know a lot of people who know her. I may have met her, but I don't know her well, if I know her at all. But I know her by reputation and I know what she does. And we're very, very concerned here in Britain. So please keep Hatun in prayer. Finally, to our Jewish friends.
Jacob, Can I just ask, David Wood, you're talking about Acts 17 apologetics,
Yes, correct.
aren't you? That
Correct,
David Wood, yeah. Oh,
Yes. Acts 17 minutes. The apologist to Islam.
Yeah.
Also to our Jewish friends globally and in Israel, we wish you a very happy Hanukkah. It is our prayer and our hope that the same God who gave the people of Israel victory over the Syrian Seleucids, Syrian Greeks, will also give them victory today over Hamas and Hezbollah. This is our prayer for the Jewish people at this particular time. He who keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. אנחנו רוצים להגיד חג חנוכה שמח לחברים שלנו בארץ ישראל. ואנחנו מקווים ואנחנו מתפללים גם כן שיהיה ניצחון מן השם נגד אויבינו. אותו השם שנותן לנו ניצחון נגד הסוריאנים והיוונים, הוא ממש יכול לתת לנו ולתת לעם ישראל ניצחון נגד המעברים האלה עכשיו. וככה אנחנו מתפללים בשם ישוע אדוננו. חג שמח לכולם.
Amen.
to that.
Hey, Andy, I wanted to ask you, how do you guys celebrate Hanukkah there? Or do you guys have some latkes and stuff like that? Or how do you guys do it?
Well, no, Bev's diabetic, so we don't.
Oh, okay, can't do that.
No,
what
it's
about
just
you?
had to lay off all that stuff. All right,
Yeah.
you know, so we,
No latkes and no sufganiyot.
yeah, no, we really no, they're lethal for Bev, those things.
Oh man.
You know, yeah, she was, you know, so her A1Cs are too high at the moment as well. So, you know,
What do you guys,
no,
what do you
we've
guys
had-
do? Or at least up in Northern Galilee, how do people celebrate it? What do they do? I mean, they're just culturally.
To be honest, actually, it's not as well here. I've not seen an awful around town. There's not been much going on, to be honest. I mean, you've seen the sufganiyot, the donuts in the shops and the
Yes.
things, but I've not actually seen a lot of it. To be really, it's I didn't know it was until Bev told me yesterday. I had no idea. Because I mean this town it's very Russian, and they're not as bothered about it as the
Interesting.
you know I mean
Is it because of maybe the conditions of just the what's going on in Israel now with the war?
I think also people's minds are distracted a little bit, but you do see now, but you are seeing some posters and things that are more themed that way, aimed also at the current situation vis-a-vis Hamas and the Gaza as well, but it's not, you know, I don't think it doesn't, at least from what I can see, it's not as big, certainly not here in Nahariya as you might see Hanukkah in the UK or the US.
Yeah,
I think it's less emphasized.
Yeah, it's more emphasized in Jerusalem, obviously.
Jerusalem. Yep.
Yes, and if you're like Lubavitch or something like that, you know, there may be some of the really Orthodox would be pushing it more, but Nahariya isn't really very from, it's not very Orthodox. There's so many Russians here.
Yeah.
That you could actually walk down the street and you could live a complete life here without speaking a word of Hebrew, probably, if you were Russian. You just speak Russian all the time. There's a big Russian subculture here. Yeah.
It's becoming like that with speaking French as well.
Well,
Yes, we have also French here and Spanish. A lot of Hispanics in Nahariya and a growing French population. A lot of French saw the writing on the wall after that incident where they murdered that cartoonist, the Hebdo incident, the Charlie Hebdo incident.
Charlie Hebdo, that's right.
They started to think it was time to go, you know.
That's fascinating stuff, man. Thank you so much, Andy, for that information. It was also Pearl Harbor Day yesterday, to memorial of Pearl Harbor. Jacob, any thoughts on Pearl Harbor 82nd year? That's
I was a bit astounded that the day before Pearl Harbor Day, the Japanese Prime Minister spoke to Benjamin Netanyahu by telephone, I suppose through a translator. Well, he may know English, and he was warning Israel about the civilian casualties in Gaza, and taking that very much the Biden line about the civilian casualties in Gaza. That was very strange coming to me, coming from the Prime Minister of Japan. Did he ever hear of Nanking? If he's so concerned, if he's so concerned about civilian casualties, Japan has never come to terms with its own genocidal war crimes against the Filipinos, against the Koreans, and against the Chinese. They've never even come to terms with the genocide they perpetrated. Unlike Nazi Germany, they never came to terms with it. Well, why is he lecturing to Israel about something in his position when he's never even acknowledged what he did himself? The Israelis were fighting in self-defense. They were attacked. When Japan invaded China, they were not fighting in self-defense. They were just fighting for the sake of Japanese imperialism under the guise of Shintoism. I just find it very hypocritical. Very hypocritical. It's not like they're a nation that's acknowledged their own culpability historically, the way that Germany did. They've never done that.
Very interesting. Hey, did you hear that Tulsi Gabbard had posted something on her Twitter, I believe, X is called now, that warning the U.S. of helping Japan so much because, hey, Japan once turned on us, and we have to be careful that we don't arm somebody else that can eventually in the future harm us again. And the Dems just went crazy against this congresswoman from Hawaii. I thought it was really interesting. Jacob, those who have died recently, and just it was yesterday, I believe it was Sandra Day O'Connor's turn.
No, that was about a week ago.
Was it about a week ago?
Yeah, we did make a statement on RTN concerning it. It just didn't fit time-wise with Moriel TV. But I mean, she was the commensurate wicked woman. She was a very, very evil woman, a very evil woman. And she was emblematic of the hypocrisy of the Republican Party and of the Reagan administration. Reagan ran on a pro-life platform to cultivate the evangelical vote, even the conservative pro-life Catholic vote, and the Orthodox Jewish vote, which is pro-life. He ran on that platform, and the first thing he did was appoint a Supreme Court justice who has a pro-abortion voting record. On the case of Casey versus Planned Parenthood versus Casey, she had the deciding vote, and she voted with the abortion lobby. Alan Dershowitz said she was always the pivotal vote. She had similar votes on things like affirmative action. But worst of all was she wrote the court's decision ordering the 10 Commandments out of the judicial building in Alabama. Well, now she knows the Supreme Court is not the supreme being. She's standing in the real Supreme Court before the real Chief Justice, and she's not going to have much of a case to argue in her own defense. Now she's giving account. She was a wicked, wicked woman, and her appointment was an absolute betrayal of the Christians and conservatives and pro-life voters who supported Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan had a affinity for wickedness with women. He liked wickedness with women. His wife was a practicing witch. She was advising him more than any other presidential wife, more than any first lady since Eleanor Roosevelt, on how to run the country. When Reagan gave his famous speech saying that trees, it's well known, are responsible for 85% of pollution, she began standing on back of him to stop him from making bumbling mistakes. He was not as far gone as Biden, but he was capable of saying some ridiculous things and reliant on his wife. Well, she was having astrologers. She was having fortune tellers. She was having Jean Dixon in the White House getting advice to give her husband how to run the country based on witchcraft and the occult. This was Ronald Reagan. The naivety of Christians thinking that voting for a Republican like Reagan or even Donald Trump is the Christian vote or the Christian thing to do. Now, I'm not denying that Donald Trump did some good things and he was more sympathetic to Christians than other people, particularly with the persecution of Christians and also moving the embassy to Jerusalem. I'm not denying that. But to equate him as some kind of a Christian figure, this is just absurdity. It's as absurd on one hand when he had the homosexual and lesbian gala with Ricky Lake at Mar-a-Lago. This is the man that Christians are saying is God's man. Now, look, I voted for him twice and I pray for him, but I don't think that he's God's man. And I certainly didn't think Ronald Reagan was God's man. we complain now about what Biden is doing, giving all this money to Iran in the spirit and continuation of the policies of Barack Obama. Giving, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars overall from Obama and Biden together to Iran, the world's #1 sponsor of terror, and the Joe Biden administration being the #1 sponsor of Iran. I talk about that. Let's remember, Ronald Reagan gave weapons to terrorist Iran. He armed terrorist Iran. And when he was caught, he pleaded senility, which may have been a half-truth. But that's what he did. When I see Sandra Day O'Connor, it just testifies to me how naive, gullible, and undiscerning Christians are. We need to pray for whoever gets elected, but to put our hope on a political candidate that's going to appoint somebody who's going to be for us. Now, Donald Trump, in fairness, did appoint constructionist conservatives to the Supreme Court and to the federal court system. He absolutely did do that, and he made something of a difference. I have to salute him for that. But I do not salute Ronald Reagan for anything. He appointed this wicked woman. She was a wicked, wicked daughter of the devil. She ordered the 10 Commandments out of the judicial building. She had the deciding vote in the biggest abortion case before the Supreme Court since Roe v. Wade, and she went with abortion. She did a lot of things like that. She was a terrible, terrible woman. And now she is giving account. That's where she is. The Supreme Court is not the supreme being, as she has found out.
Yeah, I was reading about her bio. She did that on the first, Jacob. You're right about the first. I just run into her news. That's how much it was that important, I guess, for me. But she was really into a lot of rulings, including the Bush Gore, and back in 2000, the case I was really interesting. And her replacement, Alito, basically was the one that overturned the decision of Roe v. Wade. So irony of ironies. But the other guy that died, or the other person that died just a couple of days before her, was Kissinger. We touched on it a little bit earlier, and I pulled up some interesting facts about Kissinger. And I think some people on the chat, Jacob, wanted to know if they haven't heard your thoughts on Kissinger. You mentioned it last week, but his legacy of blood: Cambodia, East Timor, Chile, Bangladesh, Argentina, Vietnam, of course, Laos, giving us the petrodollar, taking the dollar off the gold backing. I mean, he is quite a progressive destructionist. It was a time bomb, of course, but he did a lot of this, obviously, under when he served under Nixon. But he was still very much a counselor to like the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of what we see today is Kissinger's master plan, I guess you would say, of depopulation, controlling of governments and things like that. Any thoughts on that, Jacob?
Kissinger is the Republican version of Soros. Soros being a Democrat version, Kissinger being the Republican version. Both Jewish Holocaust survivors, both come as refugees to the United States. Both were enemies of America. I often remember, and I'll never forget in my life, when Americans were dying in Vietnam, he opened the door with Nixon to trade with China and with détente with Russia while they were supplying the North Vietnamese with the wherewithal and the hardware to kill Americans. He was increasing trade with them. That man sold America down the river. He was also, like Soros, a Jew who was no Jew. He really wasn't. He pressured Israel unjustly in the aftermath of the 1973 Yom Kippur War. He forced Israel to give up strategic emplacements on Mount Hermon, on the Golan Heights, and various other things. He was no friend of the Jews. He was no friend of Israel. He is very much a Jew in the same vein as Soros. Only one is a Democrat leaning and one was Republican. That's the only thing. That is the only thing.
Yeah, if you want to know more about Kissinger and his, of course, his adventures, Cambodia, 500,000 killed because of him. East Timor, 200,000. In Chile, they backed the dictator. Argentina. Yeah, the dirty war.
I always said at that time, I was saying, this is a long time ago now, that if the United States is so against communism spreading in Latin America, they should stop driving people to it. Literally backed junta after junta after junta.
Yeah, the dirty wars. Yeah, the dirty wars. Laos, Vietnam.
He was not a good man.
Yeah. Jacob, I want to ask you this, and also to Andy. What do you think of the Deputy Prime Minister in the UK, Oliver Dowden, talking about stock up on candles, batteries, and things like that because of the grid down situation, the concern for a hack in the digital communication and lights. I mean, coming from a Deputy Prime Minister sounds a little bit more alarming than just the average person on a blog.
It's going to be like Edwina Curry, but she's an awful woman. But I saw her once on a train. She was an awful woman. She said the same thing about a virus, you know, and don't eat eggs and all this kind of stuff. And
remember that?
Yeah,
they called it egg wiener for months after that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I would see him very much in that vein. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a real threat to the grid, but that's not peculiar to Britain. It's look, Chuck Missler went overboard with the electromagnetic pulse stuff, but it's still true. It's still true. Grids are vulnerable unless they're put underground and well insulated, and they're not. So it's definitely true. The question is there some reason to believe that there's an imminent attack being threatened, or that with a cyber attack they can close down the grid? That's the issue.
You know, preparedness is always good in my opinion, but you know, the time of the public statement like that is also very interesting, with all the hacking and all the cyber attacks that banks have been going through.
Yes.
Utility companies have been going through, and of course the WEF, it's been very much open about cyber Polygon and making the world aware that the next big event in the world is going to be a cyber attack. Now, whether people believe it or not, that's up to them. But the reality of it is they said it. So I just thought it was interesting, the timing.
You know, if the UK keeps going down this route of renewable energy, they won't need to cyber hack the national grid for it to collapse. It'll collapse of its own accord.
Yeah, correct.
Really.
Correct.
You know, you don't need any help to make it collapse. They're working towards that anyway.
Yeah, Jacob, real quick, some of our viewers have informed us that Hatun Tash is safe. We can't confirm it, although somebody has said that Jay Smith has confirmed it, but we can't find that. So
no, I'm unable to verify it. I've been talking to a lot of people that we cannot verify it.
Yeah, so that's deleted. That's
there's
deleted.
no confirmation.
Yeah, so you know, for whatever it's worth, people are saying that some reliable information that she is safe, but we can't confirm it just yet. So thank you for those who are providing that information. We're still looking to see how we can confirm it. We appreciate that, though. So much prayer. I remember
the very fact that there's a missing persons report with the police.
Yeah,
that speaks volumes in itself.
Yeah, I remember
if she was not missing. Why is there a missing persons report?
Yeah, I remember when she was she was almost killed. She was stabbed. She has a wound because of a stabbing that happened when she was in Speaker's Corner. So very brave. I think she was in California maybe a couple of years ago, maybe last year she was here speaking at a apologetics conference. So very brave woman, and we definitely appreciate your prayers. All right, Jacob, let's catch up. You know, we obviously been talking a couple of issues here, but the anti-Semitism in universities is a huge topic here, and that is a committee to investigate these colleges, universities. After they showed up to Congress this week, it is clear that these presidents of these universities have no interest in protecting any Jewish person that goes to that school and allowing an open promotion of genocide against the Jews under free speech, they say, or we need the right context about the chance from the river to the sea. So I'll leave it up to you and then to Andy to comment on it, because they literally are calling for Jewish genocide in the universities of the United States.
If in the name of free speech, you began attacking Islam and saying that what's called radical Islam is just Islam and giving evidence from the Quran to prove it, then there'd be another standard. You're an Islamophobe. We have to close you down. Or if you began speaking about even the clinical and scientific genetic realities of transgenderism, they'd close you down. There's always two standards. If you notice, the University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, what was the third one? Was it Yale?
MIT.
MIT. Notice radical female feminist presidents who were appointed because of their feminism and because of their gender, not because of their qualification. I believe that. and notice the hypocritical double talk coming out of their mouths.
Yeah.
It was pathetic. It was
When you begin to look at the rapes that took place of the victim, there was gang rapes of abducted Israeli women. And when her name Jaypal, the congresswoman from the squad, she said, well, that's just the way it goes in wars.
Oh yeah, I have that clip. I have the audio.
Why would these women not be up in arms about it if they were not hypocrites? Why would they not be up in arms about the raping of women if they were real feminists? What they are opportunists, liars, and hypocrites. That's exactly what they are. The best thing that can happen, we have to have a Congress that will stop funding these universities until there's reform. Second thing, the Alumnus Association has to stop giving them money and demand resignations, not just firings of these professors and presidents, but firing of the trustees for not doing anything about it. The only way to stop them is cut off the money. That's the only way.
I mean, we're talking about colleges that at one time were considered prestigious, but it's completely moral, bankrupt, and pathetic. The way they answer that, anybody watching that would be able to tell, I'm not sending my kids. I don't want to ruin them by sending them to MIT. Andy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, one of the things, did you notice one of the, I can't remember which, it was the blonde woman. I don't know which university she was president of, but
I think that was
when she was being questioned, she was smirking with this horrible smirk that she had on her face. The fact that they could even say that in front of Congress just shows how emboldened they are. But this kind of thing, it's less prevalent, at least open in the UK, but you can see even Cambridge and Oxford, they have this stuff, this kind of culture in universities, not just Cambridge and Oxford either, but it's been going on. Harassment of Jewish students has been going on for a long time in the UK.
Yes,
and in universities, it's not just the US.
When I was in Australia, David, what's the one in Sydney? What's that? The University of Sydney. We met someone who was there, went to that school, but they were saying that there were also protests within the University in Sydney.
I think it's actually just called the University of Sydney. I can double check for you if you like.
I thought it was like maybe South Wales. I forget the name of it, but also the colleges there, also universities in Australia. Maybe not as rampant as here, obviously smaller, but it just seems to be on the kids, the young kids. From the river to the sea, they couldn't stop it because they said it depends on the context. Well, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's the eradication of Jews, Jewish people.
And blame the State Department and blame Joe Obama for giving visas to these radical Islamic students coming to the United States and Britain, in Britain, to study, to give them student visas. And many of them will stay here beyond their studies. Why give these people visas? Their student visas should be canceled. That is another aspect of what's happening. There is something of a kickback. I'm seeing a kickback a bit in Italy with Miss Maloney. I'm seeing a kickback in Holland with Gerd Wilders. I'm seeing a kickback in Argentina. I hope that kickback, I pray to God that kickback comes to the USA, to Britain, and to Canada, and to Australia. I really, really do. It's about time.
Yeah, I hope they kick those presidents out of their job, because it for sure.
Yeah.
But this is again promoted. We talked about Chuck Schumer last week, Jacob, where in the past Chuck Schumer would promote all this, pro-Muslim, BLM, Antifa. Yes. Now it's come home to roost. Now they don't like it, of course, but now this is again part and parcel of what I believe the Democratic Party will have for America in 2024. The complete hell that is about to unleash against anybody that speaks out for Israel, for the Jewish people, as a conservative, for Trump, as a Christian. It'll be a hellish experience, in my opinion, leading up to November 2024.
I think you're absolutely correct. They're desperate. The situation is very much one like this, where radicalism is increasing, but two-thirds, these go between 63 and 67%. Overall, two-thirds of Democrats are not pro-Israel.
Oh man.
It's about 67% of minorities in the Democratic Party. It's about 64% of students, roughly, and about 63% of others. They're just not. You've got two kinds of Jews I'm thinking about this Hanukkah: the morons and the Menlauses. The Menlauses, as I've said before, are the Benedict Arnolds of Judaism. Menelaus was a Jew who cooperated with Antiochus Epiphanes against the Jewish people in the epic of Hanukkah, the first Hanukkah. He was a collaborator. Well, Chuck Schumer is a collaborator. Now he's beginning to complain, but he was a collaborator. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is another collaborator. Blumenthal is another collaborator. These are the Menlauses. They betrayed not only the interest of America, but of their Jewish constituency. The others are the morons. A man who I often agree with, even though I'm ideologically different than he is beginning to realize he's been spelling his name wrong. Alan, Alan Dershowitz has realized he's been spelling his name wrong. He should be spelling it Alan Jerkowitz.
Oh.
At least he had the integrity to admit that he was bamboozled by Obama and that Obama's a liar. He's waking up and realizing, at least he's telling the truth, that he's been very foolish, very naive, very undiscerning. Now, again, to a degree, I respect Mr. Dershowitz, and I often agree with him, even though ideologically we'd be in different camps on fundamental issues like abortion and so forth. Nonetheless, at least he realizes it. You've got a betrayal of the Jewish people from within that I've been talking about for years. And if there's any Menlaus now, if there's a Menlaus who was assassinated by the Maccabees, the Menlaus of this present time in history would be Chuck Schumer, magna cum laude. He is a Menlaus.
Yeah. Jacob, I remember you mentioned when 82% of the Jewish vote in America voted for Barack Obama. I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it 78%? Yeah. It might have gone down recently, but it's still pretty high. That would still vote for anybody with a D next to it, and I think they've just been conditioned to do that. But honestly, I obviously would challenge them. I said, this is the party that promotes Islam, that promotes Hamas, the killing of Jews, the raping of Jewish women.
Yeah.
You would still go along with it? I mean, how long are you going to put up with this stuff?
As I've always said, the three kinds of people most bamboozled by the Democratic Party: students, minorities, especially blacks, and Jews. When a student votes Democrat, they're going into that booth, pulling the lever and saying, I don't deserve a future. I'm too stupid. When a black pulls the lever for the party of Jim Crow and slavery, they're saying, yes, boss, how's it coming? And when a Jew pulls the lever, they're volunteering to pay their own train fare to Auschwitz and sew a yellow star on their jacket. This stupidity. It's no coincidence that the three kinds of people, the three constituency blocks that Barack Obama stabbed in the back the worst, were Jews, students, and blacks.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
They reap the fruit of their own stupidity.
In Israel, Andy, it obviously the left side of the party is the left wing party. Is it pretty prominent in Israel? I mean, how? I mean, I know it's the right wing right now that it's, at least you call it moderately right with Netanyahu, but the left pretty strong there. I mean, how do the Jews see left and right like in America? It's a weird thing. It's most Jews are left wing.
It's a little different here. The national split is much more equal. The nation is really kind of split right down the middle almost, and it, you have a kind of floating section in the middle, but it's much more, I think. And also you've got the religious parties as well, and they hold the kind of balance on the whole. Most time you can't make a coalition without them. So. And one thing that has happened recently is, because only a few months ago there was talk about, there could be a civil war because everyone was erupting against the right-wing government in
Judicial reform.
Smotrich and some of the. I mean, Smotrich, I think, and the other guy was particularly. Some people, the left, consider them particularly repellent because they had connections to the Kahanists or something like that. They were considered to be extreme. But now since the October the 7th-ish horrendous thing that happened, atrocities, it's united the nation again, which is quite interesting. At least for a while, the hostility towards the government has been papered over. And maybe this has woken up some of the lefties as well a little bit, that the policies of giving land and stuff and power to Hamas wasn't a good idea after all.
Yeah.
Maybe some people will wake up.
We have to. Yeah.
Go on, Yaakov. Go on.
What Elon says is right. I just think a lot of people who are not Israeli or have not lived in Israel don't understand the history of the genesis of Israeli political parties. In most countries, the right wing was the party of the establishment, okay? The ideological left was the party of the disenfranchised.
Right.
In Israel, it was the opposite.
Yeah.
Like Moroccan
Yes,
Jews,
that's true.
poor Jews would vote ultranationalist. Well, the establishment was what we call WASPs, White Ashkenazi Slabra Petexia. They were socialists. They followed the founders of the kibbutz and the Moshav movement. They were socialists. So in Israel, the left was right and the right was left. Add to that the division between religious and secular Jews. So there's no equivalence with what you'd see in the United States or in Europe. The other country where there's no equivalence, and again, my own family being a mixture of Israeli and Irish, I'm acquainted with both, is Ireland. Ireland, the two main parties, apart from Sinn Féin, are Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Well, it's not about left and right ideologically. It's about, did you follow Michael Collins or De Valera in the Irish Civil War in the early 20th century?
Yes.
Were you pro-treaty with Britain or anti-treaty with Britain? That it was not about ideology in terms of economic philosophy or anything of that nature. It was not that. So Israel and Ireland are two countries where the conventional norms of left and right do not apply in the same way they do in other democracies.
No, that is very true. Obviously, even the beginning of Israel was like that. Pretty much socialist, communist idea. I wanted to ask you this, Jacob. The Dems, of course, especially U.S. Representative Ayanna Pressley and Senator Peter Welch here in the States, trying to pass a bill. It's got some momentum about giving people in U.S. prisons the right to vote, as well as lowering the voting limit of the voting age to 16. I mean, it seems to be they want to get young people and want to get those in prison to vote. Yeah. And obviously, they will get their votes toward the Democratic Leftist Party.
Same reasons they want to give statehood to Guam and Puerto Rico. Same reason they want illegal immigration and allowing illegal immigrants not to have to present ID to vote. It's simply there in order to illegally manipulate elections. It's to keep the election system crooked. That's why they want to do it. It's about power. They realize that Hispanics, as they become upwardly mobile and anglicized, that second and third generation Hispanics are the same as gringos, and they're more and more Hispanics are anti-illegal immigration. They're more in tune with their basic. They even call them Los Pochos. There's the Hispanic Americans, and then there's the Chicanos. They don't realize there's a division even in the Latin American community in the United States between like Cubans, Puerto Ricans, who are American citizens, and Los Pochos, the ones who've always been there illegally, and the illegal immigrants. There's a division in the Latin community. Well, they're afraid of that. They're very much afraid of that. They realize it's a big problem. They've got to do anything they can to keep power. That means illegal immigration. That means giving a youth vote down to 16. That means letting prisoners vote. That means pimping off your mother. They don't care. They have no scruples and no morals about anything. None.
another reason why they might want prisoners to vote is because half the Democratic Party might be on the wrong side of the bar. After if Trump gets in, so they want to retain their vote, the right to vote.
That is very true. In fact, that's probably very true even today. But it's interesting, watching the debate. I caught a little bit of the debate, most of it, I should say, after a couple of days. But that night, I caught a little bit of it. The debate in the Republican Party, because where's the opposition party? You think about that in the United States. Where's anyone saying anything against the evils of culture of today? And you have this guy Ramaswamy Vivek. And although he says the right things, and he pointed out things that are obvious within the Republican Party, and Jacob was talking about early on Republicanism and being confused with Christianism. It's interesting. They got these, Chris Christie and Nikki Haley, who are obvious neocons, war-like people, and they want more war. They want a war in Ukraine. They want a war here. They want a war there. And of course, they sit on the boards of a lot of these companies like Raytheon and Boeing, and especially Nikki Haley. Jacob, what do you think about Ramaswamy? It was interesting. I mean, he brought up things that I don't think even DeSantis wants to touch.
He's a Hindu. He's not a Christian.
Right.
90%
he's
of
Republican.
He's
Republican.
Yeah, he's Republican. 90%, but he's not an establishment Republican. That's what's interesting. He's not a rhino.
He's an outsider. Yeah.
Yeah. 90% of the time, I agree with him. 90% of the time, I agree with him. But he still worships demon idols. And sometimes I don't agree with him. I was not comfortable with his position on the Middle East and Israel. But 90% of the time, I agree with him. But the only winners of those debates with Christie, who's an absurd figure, he's just become a laughing stock.
Why is he there? Why is he there? I mean, I didn't even know he was running.
I mean,
is he trying to get a job with the next administration at the
I don't know what, the only winner to that debate was Donald Trump.
But there he won.
He had the good sense not to show up and go down to that level.
It was the lowest rating of, I think there's 4 of them or 3 of them that they've had. It was the lowest rating of all of them. And it was
ideologically, I like, our friend Governor DeSantis. I really do like him, but he's not a charismatic personality and he's not an orator.
No, he's in trouble. He had really a lot of trouble.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
He just does not have the pizzazz, which is, in an ideal world, that shouldn't be a factor, but in the real world, it is.
Yeah. Hair, charisma, and a great orator. I guess that's really the 3 things that actually win out an election.
And the ability to do mean tweets.
Getting into that, it is interesting. Speaking of that, with Twitter and X, that they're trying to all these companies exiting X, and there's a real collusion to try not to advertise on X. I thought it was pretty interesting because a lot of people are going toward X that want free speech, but then all the other companies, all the establishment companies, are getting out of there, and they're losing money quite a bit. I don't think Elon cares too much about it, but I thought it was interesting that a lot of the establishing companies, especially like Disney, doesn't want to advertise, and it's calling out Elon and all these other people. It's just weird, but I think with X and social media in the election cycle, 2024 is going to play a big role. I think that's why I think they're trying to take out Twitter or X, because I think it's going to play a big role in 2024, and they don't want anybody to be posting anything on that platform.
Yes,
I think Jay and I were talking. Go ahead.
Sorry, go on. I was going to say that the Twitter is it's also you've got different levels of account. You can buy you can subscribe and pay. I don't know how much it is a year. I can't remember now, but that you don't see any adverts after that. So maybe most people would be, the cost is quite reasonable, I think. So most people would be maybe go that route anyway. So it become a subscriber service rather than
you're right. Instead of being free and advertise, and with all the advertisement, they're just going to make it for a pay service just to have it in.
Yes,
what they're going to go
Especially
with.
if the video platform side of it grows a lot. People will probably be happy to do that rather than watch ad after ad on YouTube.
That's right.
No, it's unbelievably crazy. But it's speaking of what the Dems were trying to do, especially they're trying to censor Vivek Ramaswamy because he was just completely, I guess maybe not according to the Dems, he's just a complete fascist, Nazi, whatever they call him now, because he mentioned things about J6, he mentioned things about transsexuality, he mentioned things about the election, and they were just freaking out. But looking at what the Dems are doing with people like him and other people that are conservative. Did you guys see that the Daily Wire, the actor from the Daily Wire, was arrested at the night of the premiere of the movie? Jay's the one that turned me on to that because I knew the movie was coming out, but I had no idea that arrested one of the actors in the movie, Saika Masakawi, who had been there in Washington D.C. on J6 on January 6th. Now they're going after him for 4 misdemeanors. Related to his presence just on the Capitol building. So quite an interesting thing. On the night of the event, they arrest him for something that happened 3 years ago.
Yeah. The FBI in person.
Yeah,
arresting someone for misdemeanors.
The Federal Bureau of Intimidation.
Yeah.
I mean, is this the future of a lot of conservatives and Christians who they're going to go back into some kind of obscure event?
That's where Vivek Ramaswamy is right. He realizes the FBI is irredeemably corrupt, that it has to be abolished and replaced, that you cannot have the FBI, it has to be destroyed. It has to be just like the IRS. These things have to be eliminated. They have to be
extirpated,
put into oblivion. They cannot exist anymore. They have to be replaced, or their responsibilities have to be distributed to other agencies of government. But the FBI and the IRS have no moral right to exist.
They shouldn't even be referred to as the FBI anymore. They should be they should be called the Gestapo, because that is what they fill. They are a secret police going after people, regular citizens, for intimidation and for politics.
That's correct.
That's what they've become.
A political police. They've always been that, but now it's gotten way out of hand.
Well, they've been caught, researching and doing background checks on Christians and going around intimidating parents at parents' meetings, teacher parents' meetings, and it's just unreal. Have they been unleashed, as well as, of course, the federal government has completely unleashed illegal searches of Christians.
The very fact that they obtained a FISA warrant on false pretenses with a forged dossier. Why did nobody go to prison? Why is Payton Strzok not in prison? Why is Comey not in prison? And then Mr. Trump fires McCabe and those guys, whoever he fired, and he gets Christopher Wray, who's just as corrupt as the other ones. It's irredeemable. It's hopeless. Nobody should try to reform or redeem the FBI. It needs to be abolished. Full stop. It's the Federal Bureau of Intimidation. It is a political Gestapo. That is correct. It needs to be demolished.
It's interesting that we're talking about the guy that got arrested by the FBI. What about the guy that made the meme about Hillary? And he's in prison. I mean, it sounded like so much like what happened in Ireland, where Leo was talking about we need to go after anybody that's causing, in social media, and anybody that's speaking against illegal immigration. Well, this guy, Douglas Mackey, he's in prison 7 months, and his sentence was postponed by the appeals court. But now he has got to wait. It's got to go to a district court and maybe a Supreme Court, a second court of appeals, maybe Supreme Court eventually, on the basis of free speech. But Jacob, this is what I was referring to. It's no longer. I mean, if you live in a country where this is happening, you cannot say your country is free any longer.
No. When you have people from January 6th in prison without bail for a crime that never even happened. Look, you had Congress pass a law saying that NASA and the Pentagon had to disclose data concerning unidentified flying objects.
Yes.
And the Pentagon's saying we're not doing it. Or Eric Holder, another guy who belongs in jail. Eric Holder, Attorney General of the United States in contempt of Congress. You know,
yeah,
there is no rule. It's political justice. It is not legal justice. It's just a corrupt system. That's what we've got. That's what we voted for.
Yeah, corrupt judges, corrupt system. And you talked about, Jacob, and Jesus warned about this. And in terms of persecution, you're going to go to the courts.
Not walk before magistrates and kings.
Yeah, this is what's really fascinating. And what's interesting about the Ireland case and this new bill that they're bringing out, it already was bad enough before this. Now that they have put some more teeth into it, they literally want to control the internet in Ireland. So if you're an Irish citizen under this bill, your internet, it's completely controlled by the government. What you say and what you post, it can land you in a very deep mess with the government.
Yes.
Because of free speech. Obviously, it's a different kind of free speech in terms of they don't have a constitution, but in terms of posting anything.
Yes.
And it's really a control of the internet. You control the internet, you control everything about people's not only people's communication, but banking. You were talking about earlier, Andy, about banking and VPNs and stuff like that. That's all going to be controlled in Ireland. It's going to be controlled by the government.
Oh, did you see just as on the Irish Parliament has now voted unanimously to put the Hamas flag on the Parliament building?
What?
Yes, unanimously, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man, Jacob, why is that? I mean, you might have mentioned it last week, but I probably forgot about it. But if anybody didn't watch it, it was really good. Why does the Irish government are so pro Hamas? I mean, I know they're anti-Israel, and they've been
stupidity of making the false comparison of Irish republicanism and Palestinian Islamic nationalism. They're making a false comparison. In fact, the Irish are the indigenous people of Ireland, and the Jews are the indigenous people of Israel. They make a false comparison, and people buy into it. You know, why will Black Americans vote for the party of Jim Crow and slavery? You know, it doesn't make any logical sense. Why will the majority of American Jews still vote Democrat when 2/3 of the Democrat Party are opposed to Israel? It doesn't make any sense. Remember, we always say people get the governments they deserve. And that is particularly true in democracies. It's particularly true in democracies. You've got a piece of garbage in the White House, it's because you wanted him there. Adolf Hitler became the Führer of Germany because of the German people.
Yeah, they wanted him. They wanted somebody like that because they wanted a reaction. It was a reaction to what society was all about.
The Versailles Treaty, correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is quite interesting what is happening there. But I wanted to switch gears real quick to another big important subject is what's going on in the war and what's going on in the war, especially Ukraine and Russia. And you talked about those who, saying no to the Congress and contempt of Congress. Well, here is Lloyd Austin, whom Congress said, we're not going to give any more aid to Ukraine. It's already quite a bit of money, $200 billion or so, and maybe more than that. But he says, if you don't give us any more money, we're going to have to eventually fight this war. U.S. troops on the ground in Europe. He used the word very likely. If you don't give us the money, we're very likely going to do this. So is this blackmail, Jacob? I mean, the U.S. troops will be deployed if money is not approved?
Again, Constitution says Congress has the right to declare war.
Yes.
Not a politically appointed halfwit, which is exactly what he is. The man he's a halfwit. He says his priorities are woke and inclusivism and all this kind of stuff. And well, he's a half. Our enemies laugh at him, and I don't blame them. He deserves to be mocked and laughed at, as does Brown, the politically appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. These people are appointed not on the basis of their military ability, but on the basis of woke politics. That's why he's there. He's just a stooge. But notice, he sings one tune about the Ukraine, and
Yeah.
another tune about Israel. He's pressuring Israel not to fight for its defense, but gung-ho for the Ukraine without any restrictions. Again, he's a hypocrite. I don't think he's that intelligent. He's certainly a hypocrite, and he's a political stooge.
Jacob, one issue I have with what you said is I think you're doing a disservice to half-wits everywhere by calling Lloyd Austin a half-wit.
Okay. All right. The half-wits who may be viewing.
We might get letters. Yeah.
What
Yeah, I know. This is very disheartening. I mean, it is quite. I mean, I was reading it and I couldn't believe what I was reading, that he was actually saying this. In fact, we'll send our uncles, our cousins, and sons to fight Russia. I mean, man, Biden says the
By
same.
the way, how are they going to do that? Because look at what Ukraine has done. Ukraine has consistently tried to go against the defensive nature of the Russian military. That's what they do. They fortify and they wait for you to attack. So what you're saying is you're going to send a bunch of Americans to go and kamikaze against the fortified position of Russia to try to push them out of Ukraine. That sounds like a slaughterhouse.
Oh,
more than what
is done.
The media is lying. Russia is being damaged, but the Ukraine is being decimated.
Yeah,
right. Up to 500,000 people killed. It's being decimated. Oh, Russia's being damaged, but Ukraine is being decimated.
No, it is unbelievable. I mean,
I think the war of attrition. Period. The war of attrition, the Russians have already won it against Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's pretty much over. But Zelensky, I think they're going to get rid of Zelensky because they're going to put it on him. They're going to put it on him. They're going to put him out. And they're going to say, well, this has all happened because of Zelensky. And then, in my opinion, I think they're going to get rid of Biden too. The deep state's going to get rid of Biden because somebody's going to take the fall for this. What they did in Ukraine, what they've done in Ukraine, it's absolutely horrible against Ukrainians, the Russian people. It is just, anyway, I can go on and on for a while, but it is quite disheartening to see that we're calling literally for U.S. troops to go fight a war in Ukraine or any NATO ally, basically. We're not going to lose our goodwill, he says, to the NATO ally. So I don't know. This is the election is coming. There might not be one. I mean, like I said, the Dems are going to raise hell in the next year or so. So I don't know. I don't seem very optimistic toward this coming election, whether we're going to have one or not.
Yeah.
What about the Venezuela one, the Guyana, Venezuela? Did you guys hear that one?
Yes.
That is quite an interesting 70%. They annexed 70% of Guyana with the oils and the minerals and the gas and the what do they have? Diamond and gold there. I mean, it's a very rich area. ExxonMobil actually does offshore drilling there.
Right from the inception of Guyana, from its independence from the British, that border was disputed. But it was finally legally settled by international treaty and convention in 1966. And before he died, Maduro's predecessor, the dictator Hugo Chavez, who's now most likely in hell with Che Guevara and Fidel Castro discussing old times, agreed that the border was settled. Now he's changed his tune after oil is discovered offshore. The economy of Venezuela does not have the wherewithal on its own to conduct a military incursion into Guyana. It doesn't. But you've got a left-wing regime in Brazil that does. Not the best shape either. And of course, you've got Russian and Iranian backing of Maduro.
That's the key right there.
That is the other factor. That is the reality. Again, nothing can be more devoid of merit than their claims, given the fact that Hugo Chavez himself said the border is a settled issue and affirmed what was decided in 1966.
Yes.
putting an end to generational and multi-generational conflict about where the border should be located. It's just pathetic and it's absurd. The growth in national product, the growth in GNP of Guyana has been 62% per annum this year. They're going to have a 62, forget China's 4%, 5%, 62% growth with a population that's less than 1 million people.
Whoa.
Yeah.
If you live in Guyana, you're a very fortunate person.
Well, you were until the Venezuelans invaded. Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll just
Now,
wreck the economy, won't they?
Yeah.
He tried to, Maduro, he's a reprehensible person. He tried to get a referendum to get public support and a referendum vote for the annexation of Western Guyana.
Yeah.
Only 10% of the people turned out to vote. Now he's saying 95% of our citizens voted for annexation. Well, you didn't ask the citizens of Guyana, but 90. Yeah, but only 10% of them even showed up to vote. I mean,
this is Essequibo, which is the area right there that's been annexed. And of course, you said it right, Jacob, the connection with Iran, with Russia, with Hamas, with terrorist groups, which goes back to the Chavez era. It's a big part of fueling this. They see the weakness. They see the United States completely, very distracted, and with China, with Russia, with the Middle East now, that they're going to just walk right in and take it with the aid and support of terrorist organizations that are there in South America. It's well known, and of Russia, which is well known for a communist state. And now there's a war in South America. Now, I mean, another war. This is part and parcel of the days in which we live in now.
Wars and rumors of wars.
Yeah. And of course, we're hitting about, have we hit the hour mark yet? I think we hit the hour mark. That went really fast. And we want to make sure that we welcome everybody. And you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on Rumble, you're watching on MemorialTV.tv. You're watching on different platforms like Vimeo and Telegram. And we welcome you in the name of the Lord. And we're going to be jumping over on Backstage pretty soon. So we're going to be talking about a very sensitive topic. We can't talk about it on YouTube. Because there is a connection with the CCP and their protection of that. So we're going to be talking about them in another platform on Backstage. We're also going to be taking questions on Backstage. So start sending the questions in, and we are going to end up catching up with a couple of interesting topics. One is going to be about Israel, and then the other one's going to be about Bible translations and what's going on with the rapture there. So let's talk about Israel for a moment, because that's getting really interesting. Today, actually, it was yesterday, United Nations Secretary invokes Article 99, a threat to international peace and security, says Secretary General Gutierrez. And that's Article 99. It hasn't been invoked since 1989, just prior to the Yugoslavia war. And now he says it's unprecedented. We need this done. His first time he's going to do it since he took over in 2017. Jacob, what does it mean when the UN gets involved with Article 99? I mean, we're going to have UN troops and, going down Gaza, going down Jerusalem. I mean, what does this look like?
In practical terms, the United Nothing is nothing. It doesn't matter what they do. The Security Council is always going to be controlled by the veto power of 5 nations, no matter what happens. So ultimately, it means nothing. United Nothing is the United Nothing. Now, the hypocrisy of it. Why didn't the United Nothing do that about what happened in Rwanda? Why did they say nothing about what happened in the Ukraine? Why didn't they do this when 500,000 Syrians, 500,000 nearly, were slaughtered in Syria? Why didn't they say anything when 250,000 Arabs were slaughtered by the Houthis with the backing of Iran? There was never any Article 99 or UN Security Council resolution being demanded for when Muslims were killing other Muslims. It's only about Israel. It's just typical hypocrisy and corruption of the United Nothing. And again, I strongly believe the United States should cut back its funding, and other Western countries, but certainly the United States should reduce its funding of the United Nations by at least 50%.
Well, I'm trying to do that. I don't think Biden's going to do that at all. I mean, it's just
people speak about the United Nothing as if it has a moral authority.
Well,
you may as well talk about, Al Capone having a moral authority. The UN has no moral authority. When you see the United Nothing, you realize you're dealing with people who have no integrity.
Yeah.
Look at Paul Volcker investigations into their finance, oil for whatever. It's just it's a corrupt parasite class of phonies. That's all.
About Guyana either. They're saying nothing about that invasion there. So yeah, it is very one-sided. But the of course the escalation in by Hamas, not only the ceasefire, which they're blaming on Israel, which it goes back and forth, but there's also an interesting thing going on in Jerusalem, Jacob, on the first day of Hanukkah. They had this right-wing groups are very much Kahanis, what's it called, Kahanist and Jewish ultra nationalists, marching up in the Temple Mount and going down the old city and shouting that they're going to take over the Temple Mount, and they were, eject the WAF. That's what they were saying. Leftists are traitors, all this stuff, and they were led by quite a bit of rabbis there going on. So they were stopped by the police. I don't think they're going to do it again. At least 150 activists were gathered there. What do you, Jacob, to take us a little back into the history of that, because people don't know the Kahanis group.
When Theodore Herzl and when Golda Meir and when Ben Gurion and even Jabotinsky were fighting to establish a Jewish state of Israel, where were the rabbis? They were in Brooklyn hiding under the bed. These people are hypocrites and parasites. They had nothing whatsoever to do with the establishment of the state of Israel, nor anything to do with its sustenance. Most of the yeshiva bookers don't fight. They're cowards. Most of them just demand subsidies for the yeshivas. They're parasites. Now that a Jewish state exists, without their help, they want to control it. That's all they are. These people want to turn Israel into a shtetl. The idea of Israel was, we're not going to be the people of the shtetl, of the ghetto anymore. We're going to be the people of the land. The ultra-Orthodox want to make Israel into a fiddler on the roof country and put it back into a shtetl. That's what their neighborhoods look like. It's what B'nai Brak looks like. It's what the Meir Sharim looks like. It's a shtetl. These are people of the ghetto. They are not Jews of integrity. They are not Jews of courage. They are hypocrites. They are parasites. They are certainly liars. And above all, they're cowards. Now, why, if the rabbis were the spiritual shepherds of the Jewish people they claim to be, why did God have to use Jewish socialists, even Jewish communists, to reestablish the state of Israel? Why didn't he use the rabbis and the religious? But now that and many of them oppose Zionism. They opposed it. And some still do.
Yeah, I've seen that rabbi in New York.
Yeah, but now, the Nutanai Kodah and the Setmar, they're anti-Zionist. Now that it's a state, despite them, they want to control it. Yeah. Look, I believe in the right of the Jewish people to live in that country. I did not like the fact that the control of the Temple Mount is in the hands of the WAF. I don't agree with any of that stuff. But I have no more respect for the right-wing nationalists of Kahani and Kach and these parties, and the American JDL, than I do for any other terrorist organization.
Yeah, they follow, and you can tell us a little about Kahani, Meir Kahani. That's their rabbi that they said they follow, and he's got numerous images of him on posters going around when they were marching. They call it the March of the Maccabees. I mean, did they think they're going to fight?
No. The Maccabees had guts. Yeshiva boys don't have any guts.
That's funny. Eject the WAF from the temple, restore Jewish control. Obviously, they were kicked out because of the tension that they're going to cause in there. But I think there were two groups. One was called, here it is, the Sons of Mount Moriah, and the other group is called Jewish Truth. And they follow a guy named Baruch Marzel, Rabbi Baruch Marzel. I don't know if he's in some kind of Knesset group or anything like that, but it is interesting. They were praising Kahani on their Twitter page because he led them into this radical idea that they're going to go fight kind of like the Maccabees. So Any of this concern you, Jake? I mean, they're at Temple Mount. I mean, do
Look, we know
Jews
ultimately
look
what's
at
going
this?
to happen. Revelation chapter 11 shows us what's going to happen to the Temple Mount. We know the Antichrist is going to bring a false peace. We know there will be a tribulational temple. We know where it's heading. These people are just dealing with things they don't even understand. They're blind spiritually. They're blind to the meaning of their own scriptures. If you show them Zechariah 12, they'll look upon me who they have pierced and mourn as one was. They wouldn't accept it. These people are not only blind, they're woefully blind. I have no respect for the ultra-Orthodox whatsoever. None.
Yeah.
Now, there may be individuals among them who are just born into it as a culture.
Right.
And some of them leave. When a Jew joins it, they're called Baal Teshuvah. But when they leave, they're called something like they return to the question. They return to the question. Some see it and leave it because they realize it's a cult. These Hasidic sects are cults. Now, and they're Kabbalists. They're into the occult. They practice Kabbalah. They practice occult. Now, you have religious nationalists who may not be that Kabbalistic like Kahana's people, but Kahana, he was from New York. He was assassinated in New York. His son was killed in Israel. He was not a nice man. He was a violent.
He wasn't. No.
He was no friend of democracy.
No, I understand that part. Yeah, because he was like a terrorist, wasn't he?
Yes.
Calling for attacks.
He was certainly racist, that's for sure.
Oh, really?
It's commonly accepted that Baptist house in Jerusalem on Rehov Narkis was burned down. It was his people who did it.
Oh. Now, Jacob, I wanted to use that real quick to spin into, the Biden administration planning for a two-state solution right after this, because now that they want another ceasefire, they want to put this together again, and I think before he leaves, he wants to have this sort of legacy in the history that he is going to organize a two-state solution again. Now, Harris has been very vocal about this, right? It's speaking to Herzog and the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, that they want this done before the election, November 2024. So, obviously, no one's ever done it.
Well, let's just look at three basic facts. One, there's, according to the League of Nations and its successor, the United Nations, according to the British government, according to Yasser Arafat and Fatah, and according to the Jordanian government, there's always been a two-state solution. That state is called Jordan.
That's right.
Secondly, from May 1948 until June 1967, Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights were all firmly in the hands of Arab Muslims. If they wanted a second Palestinian state, in addition to the one that they said already existed, why didn't they create one when they had nearly 20 years to do it? That's the second problem. The third thing, and here is the hypocrisy and the lying of Kamala Harris and of Biden, and the stupidity of people who listen to them. Fatah, who controls the Palestinian Authority, Arafat's people, looted and pilfered the international aid that was given to Gaza to build an infrastructure. The people turned to Hamas. Then Hamas, of course, did the same thing, but they turned to Hamas. There was a war, a civil war in Gaza between Hamas and Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, in which 8,000 Palestinian Arabs were killed after the Israelis left in 2007, 2008. They killed 8,000 of each other. There has not been a democratic election as there was supposed to be for the Palestinian Authority since. They have no legal legitimacy. They have not had an election. They're afraid if they have an election on the West Bank, that Hamas would win. So Biden is talking about an illegal government in itself. It's a government that hasn't had an election in 20 years or some nonsense.
Yeah.
It just the complete now I grant you Kamala Harris is as a person of such low intelligence, she just says whatever they tell her to say. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Biden is too senile to know what he's talking about. Okay. But Blinken knows.
Yeah.
Jake Sullivan knows.
And Obama knows.
Obama certainly knows.
Now, these are they have 5 principles, what they call the 5 no's. I wonder if they took it from the 3 no's in cartoon in '67. But anyway, no forcible displacement, no reoccupation, no siege or blockade, no reduction in the territory. This is about Gaza, and no use of Gaza as a platform for terrorism. That's the principle to make this deal done. The 5 no's. Now, it's going to go down in history as the no go. Yeah, or even like the cartoon, and the 3 no's in cartoon. But that's their platform, that they're going to use Gaza, no displacement, no reoccupation, no blockade, no reduction, and no use of Gaza as a platform for terrorism. But nothing mentioned about Israel, nothing mentioned about the atrocities that they've done against Israel. It's simply about Gaza.
Well, again, I point to the fact that after the atrocities happened, the response of Kamala Harris was, we need a national strategy against Islamophobia. That's what she said. She ignored the fact that there was a ceasefire in effect up until October 6th, but Hamas broke it. Now they want another one because they're losing.
No, it is really, it's.
I pray the Almighty raises his hand against the Biden administration and the Obama administration. I pray the Almighty raises his hand against them. I really do. Not just for the sake of Israel, but for the sake of justice.
Every president that I've seen that gets involved in this, Jacob, somehow, some way, they get ousted, they have major scandals, and they eventually go
Zechariah 12, all who lift it will hurt themselves grievously.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wanted to finish here before we get into backstage, is the other probably big topic here is the Bible translation issue. We're going to finish with that. And I've been talking to Andy, talking to other people about the Bible translation organizations and how broken it is. And I didn't know this when we started reading it. It's really a broken, and I hate to use the word industry. It used to be a ministry.
Yeah.
Now as an industry. Andy, can you shed a light into this of first of all, of how it works, and then the problems with it, and then you can compare it to what Islam does with the Quran versus what the Bible translations or translators do with the translations, which some of them are very fond. We're very fond of them, but if you open it up, you'll find out that you can't really use it freely. So go ahead.
Yes, Andy. I wasn't really aware of this to this extent until about a month ago when I just came across this, and I was absolutely shocked. I thought, what? Really? And how tightly regulated some of these translations are. And for example, I think with most of them, you're not allowed to, if you're producing a work like a commentary or something, or not a commentary, but any kind of publication, you're not allowed to have more than 500 verses, I think. You can't, if you wanted to, let's say, even for a Bible study, just produce a copy of one of John's letters or Jude or something like that. You cannot share a whole book.
Whoa.
You cannot include some of these into a publication that you create that had an open source kind of Creative Commons kind of license. You can't make it, there's so many restrictions on these Bible, a lot of these Bible translations, and even the original, even Greek and Hebrew texts, and that it's actually causing problems for translators who want to put, especially for minority and small language groups and things like that. There's billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, going into Bible translation efforts abroad for many of these minority and small groups and indigenous groups and things. But very little is coming out of it in the way of translations, finished translation work with these traditional Bible societies as well. This is another thing, and there's a movement now to say, look, get rid of the copyright on Bible translations, get rid of the copyright on things like, critical texts of Greek and Hebrew, in order to allow these things to be unlocked, so that this work can get done much faster. In fact, now they've started. I mean, there's a model now where people are moving away from using the Bible societies and some of these big Bible translation ministries, and they're doing it on a local basis.
Yes.
But and it's happening much faster. But their work is also hampered by the fact that they can't. For example, if you were trying to produce a translation quickly in and you didn't have Greek skills, so you take something like, I'll just use the ASV, not the ASV, the ESV or something. I'll just translate that into some weird tribal language or something that no one's ever heard of. You can't do that. It's illegal. You can't do it.
Whoa.
You can imagine the stumbling blocks this puts in place, but that's not the only thing. Of course, the whole thing, this movement that I came across, you think about worship recordings. Or worship materials, same thing, and some of them are just as commercial as regular pop music. The same kind of licensing, the same kind of, you get hounded for copyright infringement if you could do if you use it in your church without permission or whatever, and so on and so forth. And basically, this movement there's a whole culture of this that's endemic in evangelical Christianity today. I mean, they refer to it as the evangelical industrial complex, and you can really see that. And even the Word of God now is being locked up under copyrights to stop it from being misused, but actually from it being used at all in some cases.
Wow.
And some of these are very, very strict copyright lockdowns. Very strict, some of them.
I think we're talking about the NIV, right? Having very strict, or
yeah, I mean,
ESV, yeah.
I mean, I read this thing that apparently when the NIV was first mooted, it was the translation was funded by donations to the Bible societies, but then it got flogged off to a commercial company.
That's correct.
Which is really kind of a betrayal of the donors.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is what's happened in the Christian music industry, and it's what's happened in the Christian publishing industry. They were ministries who were turned into industries. Most of them, or at least many of them, were secularly owned, run as business.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Zondervan owns NIV now. And then who owns Zondervan is a whole other rabbit trail there. But you'll find there are not many Christians involved in that.
I mean, some years ago, I can remember when I used to use an open source Bible program. I think it was I can't remember which one it was now. And then these new translations started to appear, and I thought, I'd never heard of these, like the Berean Study Bible and the World English Bible and the Open English Bible. I thought, what on earth? Where are these coming from? I thought they were just private translations, but apparently no. These are new translations that are a reaction against all the copyright stuff. So they're open, they're free to copy, free to distribute, all the rest of it. They're copyright free, more or less. So that maybe this is a factor that people might start to affect people's future Bible purchases, not just the fact of the accuracy of the translation, but maybe something else needs to be taken into account, such as, is it freely licensed? Is it an open license? And also this movement is also saying the same thing should be done with commentaries, worship materials, teaching. It should be free to give away because it's God's word, and teaching and on God's word. And who owns the copyright on God's word? God does. In the end, it's His word. We don't have the right to lock it down in the way that that has been done.
Yeah. You sent me a video.
Sorry,
did you want me to play that?
Oh
video?
yes, please. Yeah. That's quite an interesting little video. Yeah. And that's.
Okay? Let's do that. It's very short, so I'll just play it here.
Yes.
You guys let me know if we get audio, because we've been having some trouble with Zoom on audio, but here it is.
Is it true that you can't share pure scripture? I learned that at copy.church the other day, so I put it to the test and looked at major Bible translations like the ESV and NIV, and then I compared them to the Quran, and the difference will blow your mind. The Christian Bible publishers make it super clear that they own God's word, and it's strictly prohibited to share pure scripture. But doesn't God own his word? Isn't that why we call it God's word? So I got this beautiful Quran in the mail completely for free, and you'll never believe what it says inside. No rights reserved. Any part of this publication may be reproduced in any language. Is it just me, or is it embarrassing that Christians are making it illegal to copy and share the Bible and then turning God's holy word into merchandise?
Ah, there it is.
That's just a very short introduction. On the website they have, there's a lot more hard-hitting, very cutting stuff about this culture of commercialization.
I was so surprised about the Quran, the comparison with the Quran. Did you notice here it says it came from the United Kingdom, Birmingham? I was looking at where it came from, like, oh, I didn't know Birmingham was a print shop for Qurans, but I guess so now. I thought it would be Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia or something like that. But
Birmingham has a huge Muslim population.
Wow,
huge. It's a big city anyway, but it's a huge Muslim population. Yeah.
But the point is, of course, Andy, is it's free.
Yes,
you can copy, but only Christians are the ones who put restrictions on it. You know,
yeah.
If I may, can I ask a question really quick?
Go ahead, brother.
For example, if you go to Bible Hub, you can actually see the original Greek, the original Hebrew. Okay. My question is, can you use something like that as an open source to then take the Greek words, take the Hebrew words, and write your own translation of the Bible? Or is that
that's something slightly different? But what now? Okay, you might be able to translate from those Greek words there, but what you probably wouldn't be able to do was, if depending on which Greek text they're using, if it's one of the UBS ones or the Nestle Aland or something like that, you wouldn't be able to just copy and paste that into and make your own Greek New Testament and give it out to anybody.
Who owns those original documents now?
Right. Now this is the thing. What they do. I mean, you can, for instance, I think Codex Vaticanus, Sinaiticus, and many of the Greek, the actual real manuscripts, ancient manuscripts. I don't think there's a copyright on the text of those things. Though if you sold images of them, you might get into trouble. Yeah. But I mean.
But you would have to have the originals in your hands to do that, right?
Yes, Andy? But if you had the transcribed text from those, I think you'd be free to distribute that. But of course, most of the texts that we have available for most people use are critical texts that are that are compiled from various manuscripts and papyri and all the rest of it, and it's those that they've locked down by copyright. Unless you've got one of the older ones, like from 1907, or the Westcott and Hort text or something, which is incredibly similar to. I mean, Westcott and Hort is about 97% similar to NA28, which is the Nestle Aland 28 version, which came out a few years ago. There's not really a lot of difference, but they justify their copyright by saying, we put a few changes in since the last version, and so on and so forth, so we can charge you more all over again. Yeah. So the copyright is renewed because they made one or two changes here and there. So it's almost like Disney. They've got an ongoing copyright all the time.
We're gonna make the cartoon, and now we're gonna make the live version.
Yes,
yeah, something like that. Yeah, it works a bit like that. So, but this can have a crippling effect on translation and distribution of God's word. I mean, and there's much more to it than this. There's a lot more. There's a whole lot of other stuff as well, which I'm just reading about. But this is really bad. Yes. I mean, how dare we copyright God's word? And try to control it. What isn't ours to control.
Yeah, it's a problem industry here in the States for sure. And then there's no shortage of money within the Bible Translation Society, because they have plenty of money. I mean, it comes in every year, 225 million, 100 million, plenty of money to donate it to the translation societies. So they do have it. It's not a shortage of money. Well, we need this for money, fund our stuff. A lot of it comes from donations. It doesn't even come from any specifically, but donations. So so believers are donating and they're profiting it. And like the NIV example that you mentioned, Andy, then it gets sold to another company.
Yeah, I mean, they're not this kind of this movement is they're not complaining that people make nice Bibles to sell. It's that the text itself it's been copyrighted. God's word in either Greek or Hebrew form or in translation is being copyrighted. No one objects to you're making a nice Bible, printing it and selling the Bible as a but it's the merchandising of the word of God, the words of God that is the issue. And the locking of it down and claiming ownership over it.
A poor country, you want to translate it into that language, then you run into trouble.
Yes, this is one of the things that's happening. Yeah, there's some statistics on their website. It's quite an interesting topic. This, but the website that one of the main websites for this, of course, the one that you saw is copy.church, and the other one is sellingjesus.org. And that's some of the stuff on that. It's very disturbing, actually, about the way some ministry models are now operating. Yeah.
If I might ask one more question, the Geneva Bible, which I believe is the Tyndale Bible.
It's a revision of Tyndale, but it's very close to Tyndale, yeah.
Close to Tyndale, yes. It came from Geneva after the Marian exile. The Pilgrims, the Puritans who were exiled under the persecution of Queen Mary, returned from Geneva to England, and that was their Bible. Yeah. It was the Bible of the Pilgrims and the Mayflower.
Yep, that's the one that they had open in that.
Is that copyrighted as well?
No, it's been around too long.
No, I don't know that the 1560 version isn't. No, because it. But I think the modern they've done a modern version of it, haven't they? Which is I don't know who produced that now. Called the Geneva Study Bible or something, and they've updated the language. I think
that might be copyrighted.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's like the New King James Version. There's not a lot of difference between that and the Old King James Version. It's got some changes to it, and they've modernized the language, obviously. But that's got a very strict copyright on it.
Here is the problem. There's a legal complication and a being faithful to the text credibility complication. Legally, the King James only people, the Ruckmanites, say these other people have these other Bibles because they can make money by doing it, while the 1611 King James or any King James are in the public domain and they're not copywritten and you can do it. So therefore you should be King James only. That becomes one of the arguments for the King James only people. And
They already started.
That's right. The second is, it was just something that we dealt with. There was a cult in Australia, who began taking Moriel cassettes. It was cassettes then, audio cassettes, and selling our stuff. And we didn't like that. We never copyrighted. It was just free. We never wrote in the beginning of Moriel, but a cult began using it. And then there was some guy in New Zealand who began editing it, taking out the bits he didn't like and just putting it out. So, and then there was another guy, he's dead now. The Lord took him, or somebody did. Anyway, he began bootlegging our stuff.
That was fake Moriel in Australia, wasn't it?
Right. It was a fake Moriel in Australia. And we went to the lawyer and we said, look, Christian lawyer, what can we do? And he said, you've got a copyright. I said, we don't want a copyright. He said, but you have to, because you're going to get these bootlegs or people changing the content. And so we did, and we put the content in the name of Moriel, but then this other guy makes a fake Moriel. He calls it Moriel Australia or something. And then the lawyer said, the only thing you can do is copyright it in the name of Jacob Prasch. I don't want to copyright it in the name of Jacob, but what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? So, well, I agree that there's a problem here, and I don't like people profiteering off the word of God in this way. I also realized to be for fidelity to the text, and to stop bootlegging, and to stop people from, again, altering the text. How do you deal with that problem practically if you don't copyright? And a Christian lawyer told me there's no other way to stop it. That's what he told me.
Well,
and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, they do address that issue in the I think on one of the websites I mentioned, but it's certainly a very interesting topic, and I can't remember all the details now because I need to read on it some more. But it's the commercialization of things that they were really, really concerned about, and the way that these restrictive licenses are used to stop genuine people from translating or distributing the word of God. The crooks are a different thing. To be honest, if you're a crook, I don't think the copyright would bother you anyway. You just do it anyway. If you're really crooked,
That is true. It's the dissemination of God's word that's really being hampered, not the copying or the distortion of it, because most people probably don't want to get into the distortion and copying of scripture. Maybe a few, maybe a selected group of people that just want to attack it. But if the Bible's been already established that this is what the English translation says, or whatever language it says, it could be easily figured out that they corrupted it.
Okay, I agree with what you say, but here's my question. What do you do with the fact that the Jehovah's Witness New World Translation is not a translation from the Greek and Hebrew? They just took King James and other translations and amended them in accordance with their own denials of the Trinity and deity of Christ and things like that. The word was a God, but it was not an original translation from the original languages. It was just, they just copied other translations. So,
actually, one thing that's actually the KJV is not actually public domain in the way that not in the UK. It's not. Maybe in the US you could get away with it, but in the UK there's still a crown kind of copyright thing on it, and there are actually restrictions. Believe it or not, it's not completely public domain in the sense that people.
Because it's authorized by the crown. Yeah.
Yeah, Andy's correct there. You can actually share King James verses of the Bible, but you do have to have the KJV thing when you share the passage. There is a copyright on it, but it does allow you to share it.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Morielgo says anybody's free to copy and circulate these things, but do not edit it. Do not change.
Yeah, exactly. So there's got to be some restriction about copying and editing and corrupting it. Very interesting. Maybe we'll bring it back again, Andy, in a couple of months and see.
Yeah, I want to do some more research on it. It's quite fascinating, but we can see there's a problem here with the Bible translation industry and the way some ministry is being done.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to ask you, Andy, even if it's for next time too, is just kind of like there's certain modern translations where I know the people on the translation committee, they've all been there. They've had one agenda. They've had like a Kingdom Now mindset or an NAR mindset. They've all got financial kickbacks for being on part of the translation committee. I'd kind of like you to comment a little bit more on that next time too, especially these ones that are being full on Kingdom Now, NAR.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was like Brian Simmons, that one where he got the Passion Translation.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And he saw John chapter 23 in heaven while he was up there or something.
Remember that one? How they get stuff like the John MacArthur Study Bible or the Faith Counseling Bible. They get the stuff that's focused on counseling or prosperity or some Bible or man like MacArthur, and I guess they all copyright. I guess.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jay.
I just wanted to mention, because we kind of just really raced past it, but when you talk about CCLI, the music side of this, it's even more sinister, because pre-1922, anything in America, any Christian worship song created before 1921 is public domain. You don't need a license to play it. But if you look at how they've used Christian music worship songs today to push away from the traditional songs, they have actively tried to promote new worship so that they could monetize it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the worst part, is the old stuff, for lack of a better term, is biblically based. You're gonna sing a worship song before 1921. You're gonna be singing scripture most of the time.
Awesome,
yeah.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Anything past that they're using today, you're gonna be singing stuff that's really kind of watered down and commercialized.
And
there's nothing wrong with modern music. But when it's licensed like it has been.
Hillsong is exactly that. It's a way to make money for the machine.
Yeah.
And Bethel music and all the rest of it, and Jesus culture, yeah, all the same stuff, isn't it?
It's become like the music industry of the world. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. The other thing, just to finish off, and I think we got some questions on this over the last couple of months, because we have noticed, and there's people have noticed too, that a lot of pre-tribulational teachers and from those theological circles have really began to emphasize on the Antichrist. And this is something, myself growing up as a young Christian and looking at different theological issues, that was the one group that never talked about it, because in the theological conclusions that they had is that the church wouldn't be here where the Antichrist would come. So they never really talked about it. They acknowledged that it was there, but certainly didn't pay much attention to it, because they would actually make things like, they're looking for Jesus Christ and everybody else is looking for the Antichrist. And it sort of became, sort of this buzz, slogan that they had, that they were more spiritual, I suppose, than other people. So now, and it's just quite interesting, people have noticed it. I have noticed it, but we get some inquiries. Why are some of these pre-tribulational teachers and those theological circles beginning to emphasize that you have to identify the Antichrist in order for the church to be raptured? So this is something, we've asked Jacob, we've asked Andy about this. Andy and I, we've had some conversations about this. So Andy, I'll turn it over to you. We'll circle it around with each other, but just start us off. What do they mean by, because I certainly don't believe that they mean what we've been trying to say from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, but what do they mean?
Well, from the interactions I've had over here with a pre-tribulationist who's a big supporter of Arnold Fruchtenbaum and Lee Brainerd, one of the things that became obvious that, in 2 Thessalonians it talks about that day the Lord shall not come, and except there be, a falling away first and the man of sin be revealed, who is the the son of destruction, and who shall exalt himself above everything that is called God, and everything that is worshipped, and sit in the temple of God, showing himself to, displaying himself to be God. And they take that word apocalypsis of the Antichrist to be merely identification.
Okay.
So they misread it, basically. I mean, they take it from its context. I mean, the context is that that revealing happens as part of his enthronement in the temple. And you can see also further down in verse, it mentions it again in verse 8 of the same chapter. So they think of it as just merely identifying who Antichrist could be. And then, because they view the entire 70th week of Daniel as being the Great Tribulation, and they think of the Great Tribulation and the Day of the Lord as being synonymous, they can then apply that to think, oh, look, if we can identify the Antichrist, then that must happen before the 70th week of Daniel. So they've twisted two things already. So that's why they're so keen on identifying just about anything that's got two legs as being the Antichrist. That's why they're always looking for some new Antichrist figure. But they're taking it from its context, because Paul was taking his teaching from Jesus, and Jesus was saying that the disciples asked Jesus, Lord, what shall be the sign of your parousia and the end of the age? And then he goes and he gives them some initial kind of overview of the tribulation period. Then he says, therefore, when you see, the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel in the prophet, standing in the holy place, and they just take it away from all of that. They've removed it from that context completely. So they're left, because of course they also try to escape Matthew 24 by saying it's got nothing to do with the church at all. It's all just for Israel, So they've put themselves in a position where they basically just ignore all of that and redefine revealing, and there you go. That's where they're coming from, really.
So when Paul talks about his apocalypse as his revealing, which is the same word that he uses for Christ in his revealing in the same chapter, and it is
it's the same Greek word, yeah.
If you go through the chapter 2, you'll find a lot of things that the Antichrist is going to reveal and how he does things and his erge, his power. Very similar words of what Paul describes about.
Yeah, you can see it's a counterfeit parousia, and the very thing that Jesus warned about also in Matthew 24, counterfeit Christ.
Bingo.
He's just the ultimate one, yeah.
So in those theological circles, when Paul says revealing, they mean identifying before the 70th, so we could be raptured.
Yes.
So therefore, King Charles has to be the Antichrist. Trump has to be the Antichrist. Anybody has to be the Antichrist, because that's the identifying that they're looking for, which is very different than what we've been teaching on, or what Jacob's been teaching on for some time, which is related to the knowing, identifying 666, knowing about the Antichrist, or the church has to identify before we get raptured, but within the context of what Jesus said and within the context of the abomination of desolation. Am I understanding that correctly, Andy?
Basically, yes. Yeah, these things are all connected together. If you notice, like in Revelation 12 and 13, where it talks about calculating the number of the beast, it's all linked together with the activities of the dragon and of the beast around the midpoint of the 70th week. It's all connected together.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you any hint in Revelation 13 that you'll be identifying, you'd be calculating the number of the beast before the 70th week. I just don't think that's there at all.
So I think these pastors and theological guys are going on and saying, well, we're putting out the Antichrist, put a lot of material on the Antichrist, and there's a heavy emphasis now on it. And some people have been confused and say, well, are they changing their tune? Are they becoming more more balanced in a sense of, like, now are they saying that the Antichrist has to come and then we have to identify him? So are they not pre-trib anymore? And the answer is no, they're still holding to the theological presupposition, right, Andy? But they're just moving, I hate to say the word because it's going to be misconstrued, but they're moving the goalposts a little bit, as you say, and as I say, and then moving it closer to more of their presupposition. So it has to happen before any of these events. That's quite interesting, because somebody can read it and say, oh, look, they're saying what other people are saying that are pre-wrath or post-trib. So that they might be like us in a sense. They're changing their tune. Maybe they're leaving that theological presupposition. Not really.
No, they're not.
They're adding another layer, probably more complex layer, because they really have to redefine this.
Yes, they've done that. Pre-tribs have done that consistently throughout the history of the doctrine. That they've always, when opposition to their, when they faced a problem that they can't deal with by a straightforward reading of the text, they just redefine things. I mean, up until about 1937 or something like that, I think. Before 1937, you probably wouldn't have caught pre-tribbers claiming that the whole of the 70th week was the day of the Lord. After Alexander Rees put his book out in the 1930s, using 2 Thessalonians and to destroy pre-trib arguments, they changed some stuff. Radical changes took place between that and the 1970s. They've changed a lot of things. Actually, you can see. I remember that that video seven pre-trib problems, and it showed you how even over the last 20 years, pre-tribs have altered, have changed, and have moved all kinds of stuff around. They've got multiple days of the Lord. I mean, Lee Brainerd has 3 of them.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah, he has 3 days of the Lord. He has I can't remember what he's named them all now, but there's actually 3.
Wow.
Because that's the only way he can make it fit his system. I think Arnold Fruchtenbaum in 2 Thessalonians, he posits 2 revealings of Antichrist.
Whoa.
One that happens before the 70th week, and and one that happens somewhere in it.
Oh,
this is so we can get around the obvious meaning of the text. If I remember correctly, it's a while since I've read that, but I'm sure that he's positing 2. I think Tommy Ice positives two epiphanias of Christ as well. It's all. Yeah.
That is what Elon is exactly right. They move the goalposts continually. That was what happened in the aftermath of Reese's book in the pre-war era. That is what they're doing now. Since pre-wrath and interseal, whatever you wish to call it, or the variations have emerged, they keep getting confronted by the plain exegetical meaning of 2 Thessalonians 2. And they've just done what they always done: re-innovate, redefine. The rapture is the apostasy is the rapture.
Yeah.
That's one of them. Another one is now, the first person I ever heard to enunciate it was Chuck Missler. That, okay, you have to know who the Antichrist is. It does say that, but that's going to happen before the 7 years.
Yes. Yeah.
They'll just keep, again, for want of a better colloquialism, moving the goalpost.
Yeah. And it's all arbitrarily, right? There's nothing in the text that would actually point to that. They simply assign it arbitrarily. This has to happen before this event, the 70th week of Daniel.
Yes, more or less. They're trying to find some pretext, some obscure meaning of some word or something like that. Or, but really speaking, though, they've got no explicit statements to base this stuff on. That's the problem. They know they've got a problem with that, and they really hate pre-wrath. They absolutely hate it.
Yep.
Because they get very panicky about it, because unlike the post-tribulational system, which had lots of flaws in it, and even though the general idea, of course, of Christ, of the rapture occurring after tribulation was correct, there were a lot of flaws in post-trib because it suffered from all kinds of things. I mean, I can remember I was post-trib for a while after I left pre-trib, and I knew there were inconsistencies within the system. And it was always tripping me up when I was debating with pre-tribs. But since, but pre-wrath solved so many of those things. I mean, certain scriptures finally clicked together when I became pre-wrath. Oh, that solves that problem and that problem and that problem. And they don't like that because it's much more biblically consistent than post-trib. And pre-tribs are having a problem now. Yes. And you can see them panicking and getting desperate, by all the trash they put out about pre-wrath. Yeah, and the lies they tell.
Yeah, they had this meeting, right? That this was this week in Dallas with the pre-trib center, and I guess pre-wrath was a main topic in that.
Apparently, yes. I've not looked at all the footage because there's a lot of it, and it's only just been put out there. But Alan Kirshner of Eschatos Ministries was posting on Twitter.
Pre-trib study
group. That's quite funny.
That sounds nice. Is a pre-trib study group live? I mean, that sounds like really inviting. But I guess it was just mainly how to destroy, pre-wrath and what they don't like about it and things like that. So again, it's one of those questions. I think just watching some of what the chats are saying, I think there's a lot of questions that people have, and we might have to take this into a separate study at another time where. Teaching about the return of Christ, because I think it says here that Andy Woods is really confusing people. They're on our chat.
I'm not surprised
with some of his rhetoric and some of his terminology. So I guess it's part and parcel of the same thing that's always happened, right? They redefine terms, they confuse the terms, they make them synonymous, and people become confused.
Yes. I mean, remember and Jacob mentioned this in I think the opening to his book of Harpazo the things he had to lay out a lot of definitions first before he started on the meat of the book, because
the whole thing had to
there's
be
such a load of confusion been sown.
Yeah,
Sorry?
the whole thing had to be, the first few chapters had to be all about defining the terms, because it's in the popular culture of Christianity, these terms have been so confused now. Nobody really knows what they mean. Go back to the original, kind of part of the translation topic that we had. We have to go back to the original. Not sued by these translators, and use the original text to read it to let them know what they mean.
One of the things that Alan Kirshner said, it says it a lot actually, but in he had a debate between himself and Thomas Ice in 2015.
A while ago,
a proper academic moderated debate, and he says that's the only time that he can. In fact, I think it's probably the only time that has happened between a pre-Rother scholar and a pre-Trib scholar in an academic format ever since the beginnings of pre-Roth. And he said, he's made invitations to pre-Roth scholars and teachers many, many times. He said, and his invitation's always open. And he's also called them out about misrepresentation and telling lies about what pre-Rothers actually believe. And he's never had anyone else since then respond to his debate, his invitation to a debate, and the misrepresentation just goes on. Yeah, they keep telling lies about things, and that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It is. It is. I wanted to make sure that people know that, Andy, we have some of your teachings on Memorial TV answering bad pre-trib arguments and responding.
Yes, these are from a local leader here who basically, I think he reproduces a lot of Arnold Fruchtenbaum's and Lee Brainard's kind of arguments. Yeah, so I've answered them.
I wanted to invite people to watch them. And are they up on Memorial TV yet, or?
They will be.
They will be. Okay.
They will be.
All right, praise God.
I'm systematically going through his arguments, slowly. Yeah.
You have them, right, James? You have them.
I do. Just need some time to put them up. I'll get them up as soon as I can.
Yeah, just Jay and I talked about that, and we make sure we get him up. But I want to invite people to go to the Doctrine Matters, which is Andy's channel. Doctrine Matters. We'll link it to those videos.
It's only a small channel, but I mean, if people want, if people get blessed by that's great. Yeah. And feel free to copy them and give them away if you want. Download them, copy them, and give them away. That's fine.
You're not a part of that copyright group, are you, Andy? No, I'm just kidding. No,
no. Freely you receive, freely give.
No, only kidding. But I have shown it to a couple friends of mine, some church leaders, friends of mine, and they loved it. This is very, very well done, and they're very systematically going through some of the arguments from Luke 21. I think Luke 21 is one of the arguments, Matthew 24, and things like that. So I think it would be very good for people. And they're only, they're only 30 minutes long. So
the one I did on Matthew 24 was longer because
a little longer.
But I mean that was I should have split it up really into two, but never mind.
See, there'd be no complaints that saying, I can't watch a video that's 2 hours long. If this is 30 minutes, you can watch it. You can rewatch it, and at about an hour you can watch it twice. So that would be really good. So all right, well, this is for catching up. We're going to switch over to backstage. We've gone a little long today, so we apologize.
Wow,
interesting, very fascinating.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning here.
Yeah. Well, you give some topics, to you guys, and it's voluminous and it's wonderful and it's great. So no worry about that. We just want to make sure you're not tired, Andy and Jacob. So we're going to.
I'll be running out of steam soon. I can tell you. I don't know if anyone noticed about an hour ago. I actually nodded off for a few seconds.
Oh no! Don't admit that. You can't admit that. That's terrible.
No, because it's late for me.
You to death. No, I'm just kidding. No, it is late. So we want to go to backstage right away. We have some questions, and we want to make sure that we answer them. So lots of questions, lots of confusions out there, which is one thing we want to avoid, and we want to answer those questions because we want people to know the truth. God wants you to know the truth. Jesus wants you to know the truth, and this is what we're so committed to. So we'll be switching over, not on YouTube, not on Facebook. So jump over, if you're there, just jump over to Rumble, Memorial.tv, Telegram, Vimeo, lots of places to go. Go on there and you'll find us in just a couple of minutes. God bless you guys. We'll see you
very briefly. We'd like to remind our regular viewers, please don't watch us on YouTube. Watch us on our own server, Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org. Watch us on Rumble. Go to one of the alternative platforms where we will not face these kind of restrictions. We're on YouTube because it's a place to gather people and redirect them to independently managed and operated platforms, such as our own, where they can't restrict us or give us strikes or censor us. So please, watch us on Moriel TV, Moriel, Rumble, some other platform other than YouTube, if possible. Thank you so much. Marco?
Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan, to India to Africa, and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.